It's always hard for a young scholar to appear in public, and I would like to thank my colleagues and professors also who organized this workshop for making it even harder for me to talk after Mr. Romani, and such a prominent figure. Actually, it's an honor to be in the same panel. I'm going to build on what you discussed, the international actors in the Middle East, and talk about how international theory in the West treats this issue. Very difficult thing to examine. It's the Middle East, as you described it, is very hard to conform to international theory and its models. So religion has historically been an international issue, an issue that transcends border. The outbreak of interstate conflicts due to religious reasons and many international intervention illustrate its influence. But although it's always present in the analysis, this is not the case in international relations theory. It's not adequately examined, and it is not incorporated in many theoretical paradigms, neither realism nor institutionalism, only partly in extractivism. The reasons for this are multifold. Actually, in many cases, religion in international relations is discarded as a causal factor and gradually downgraded. This could be explained as a trend in social sciences in general, where, to quote Jonathan Fox, just like the scientific revolution sought the rational explanations for natural phenomena to replace religious ones, early social scientists established a tradition of seeking rational explanations and guidelines for human behavior to replace theocratic ones. So ever since the Vespasian state became a major focus of analysis in IR, religion is bypassed, even if in the examination of foreign policy. Often, however, a religious actor can impact developments. We can see the most obvious example in the legitimacy it offers to a regime, or serving as a platform for political mobilization. It is true that there are difficulties to attempt to discern clear patterns for religious actors. The diverse range of religious perspectives, the many interpretations that exist, different organizational structures that affect religious communities, and ultimately international relations and politics. All these are hard to conform to existing models. So religions worldwide may have a similar set of norms, but these are hard to relate with outcomes. All of this could be referred as some of the causes that the discipline is not prepared to incorporate religion in its dominant paradigms during the last decades. We can see, however, a trend lately in the discipline to discuss the role that religion performs in many aspects. I would like to argue that facilitating a more central role for religion and international theory could involve the examination of major global religious actors that influence international relations. So to do this, I chose three main religious international actors. that carry different characteristics. So we could focus on the activities and the behavior of the Holy See. As Mr. Romani eloquently described it, its role is very important. Also, the Russian Orthodox Church and the Protestant communities in Iraq and Syria. During the crucial period starting from 2004, the second American invasion in Iraq, until 2020. This could help us gain several insights about the impact of these actors from a theoretical point of view. These are not global onlookers, but vibrant religious actors. So they interpret sociopolitical reality according to their belief system. And these interpretations have transnational impact in the domestic politics of its country. So I examined how these international religious actors differ or resemble in their approach towards these countries and their presence there, and the reasons behind their difference and their similarities. So this could help us deconstruct the behavior and describe their targets as actors in Syria and Iraq, and see how these targets have been achieved. Providing a theoretical pattern to understand these issues has been extremely difficult for mainstream realist international relations theory, as the religion is treated as just an intervening variable. Accordingly, for liberalism, religion is mainly examined as a backward reactionary obstacle to sensible progress. English school theorems have been utilized to explain the behavior of religious agency, however. This choice has its merits, as the English school is based on the concept of the establishment of an international society, where non-state actors can participate in the international system on an equal footing with much stronger military entities, even if they don't hold any armed forces. The Holy See is a typical example, since the time that Stalin famously asked how many battalions the Pope has, to argue that it's irrelevant. But this was valid in past centuries, and it had been widely expanded in the last decades as space and ways of interaction in international relations are renegotiated. So I will present a brief overview of three different religious actors, illustrating ways they operate at the turbulent times during this period, and prove how important their actions were. The Holy See retained its ability to formulate an independent foreign policy, regardless of its inability to provide physical protection for itself and whoever it chose to protect, Christians in the region, for example. This did not prevent the Vatican from expressing totally different views with some of the regimes in the region, and even find itself on disputes with them. In general, the Holy See attempted to achieve its prime objective of protecting Christians in the region. And Mr. Romani talked about how the issue of religious freedom came up, and how the Holy See incorporated in its public speech its religious character, along with its institutional setup, influenced heavily the decisions and the geopolitical impact it had. And the Holy See incorporated Christianity within popular narratives in international relations, such as the need to protect human rights and secure international relief. The Holy See didn't shape a state's foreign policy in a significant way, although it refrained regularly from reaching political compromises with secular authorities in time of conflict. Even if the Vatican is nominally a state, it bears more resemblances with the Russian Orthodox Church and the Protestant communities. This is a reason that it is included in this paper. So switching to the Russian Orthodox Church, it also shows some interesting dimensions of international relations theory. During this period, the crucial factor of its decisions in Iraq was the strategic interaction between Russia and the United States. The greater involvement of the US in the region reinvigorated the Russian Orthodox Church's interest about Christians in Iraq and the development of the country. At the same time, the civil war in Syria brought the Russian Orthodox Church in front of new dilemmas, where it had to balance between dangers and opportunities. It promoted its own narrative in international relations while attempting to influence the greater involvement of the Russian state in the conflict, which it did actually in 2015. Relating a religious mission to Russia's international status has been a frequent feature of the Russian state's rhetoric, legitimates its claim to major power status, blends Russian nationalism with traditional elements, and shows the relevance of orthodoxy in the idea of Russia's distinctiveness with respect to Europe. So the rhetoric of the Russian Orthodox Church was based on the idea of a Russian-centered war that includes the Middle East, following the imperative of protecting Christians from the unexpected developments that arose in Iraq and Syria. The Russian Orthodox Church had in the legitimization of Russia's policy, highlighting the anti-Western stance of the Kremlin. It was also crucial in Syria's civil conflict, where Russia intervened militarily in September 2015 to protect Christians, just as the Russian Empire saved Assyrians from genocide at the time of the Ottoman Empire, as Patriarch Kirill described this intervention. So the Russian Church promoted its own narrative in international relations while attempting to influence the greater involvement of the Russian state in the conflict in Syria. So the idea of a Russian war that includes the Middle East intertwined with its rhetoric of protecting Christians in Syria and Iraq. Protestant communities in the Middle East illustrate the importance of religious geopolitics and the linkages between religion and foreign policy. From the very beginning of their presence there, when missionaries rushed to the region, they introduced an element of turbulence in the relations with the regimes. Many countries had not allowed foreign missionaries into the country ever since. The 2003 Iraq War brought the issue of apocalyptic forms of religion in the forefront. The influence of American evangelical Christians in the decision to invade Iraq has been discussed by Marina, whereas evangelicals consider Iraq as a focal point for spreading the gospel and attracting converts from all over the region. So the well-financed humanitarian missions and conversion campaigns were not crowned with success, even if there were a lot of effort spent there. They rather had the opposite effect, invite reactions from Muslims and state authorities. So despite the lack of widespread conversions, the expansion of the evangelist influence would have continued had it not been for the appearance of ISIS. ISIS brought unprecedented destruction from Christians, as we know, and disrupted any plans for such operations. Many evangelicals focused on development programs and provision of humanitarian aid over missionary endeavors. In the most secure places of Iraqi Kurdistan, evangelical communities have achieved a better status in relation to the Saddam era. The influence and the development of links with the West certainly played its part. This, however, brought the coordinated responses of other established churches that used their clout to obstruct their recognition that would permit them to operate freely within the state. The chaos that surfaced in Syria following the Arab Spring proved another battling ground for evangelicals. Even if they were at odds with the Assad regime, the civil war that erupted made them bury their differences and continue their activities. It's materialized in the form of relief and aid missions while attempting to be legalized in the country. So the presence of evangelicals in Syria and Iraq serves as a constant reminder of the negotiation of competing authorities in its country. The aftermath of the Iraq war showed the real possibility of remaking special relations inside the country during a re-territorialization period, even if attempts by evangelicals were unsuccessful. So the actions and influence of three different religious actors in Iraq and Syria were a competing alternative to the state authority projected on national territory. The Catholic Church continues to operate as a focal point in the region, as serve as a prime example of transnational religious authority since ancient time. Accordingly, the Russian Orthodox Church, closely related with Eastern Orthodox churches, especially in Syria, marked a different organizational model of independent action and is influenced by churches having been created. The Protestant communities followed a different path of development, having immigrated to the region from abroad and starting to operate there in an environment where patterns had been set. So the examination of the period from 2004 until 2020 under the geo-religious prism shows that there is a constant negotiation of order or disordered relations. Religious actors see their canonical authority compromised with established rules as they have to operate inside sovereign borders. The narrow institutional interest of the church and religious community and their search for new followers only partly explain their behavior. The socio-spatial dynamics between religion, geography, and politics in Syria and Iraq illustrate the importance of their activities both in a domestic and an international framework. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Leah, for providing this IR perspective. Since we have a lot of students that are IR students, it's really important to show how IR theory has avoided to deal with religion. Now it's quite forced to do so. Okay, so